Good morning. Foul play, potential evidence found in the building where a missing Yale student was last seen. Now Annie Lee's desperate family waits for word on what should have been her wedding day.
She's out. Serena Williams bounced from the U.S. Open after a tirade against a line judge causes her to lose a critical point and match. What did she say?
And lucky number, a baby comes into the world on 090909. But interestingly enough, that's only half the story. Find out why her parents have truly incredible timing. Today, Sunday, September 13, 2009.
From NBC News, this is Today with Lester Holt and Jenna Wolf, live from Studio 1A in Rockefeller Plaza.
And welcome to Today on this Sunday morning. I'm Jenna Wolf.
And I'm Carl Quintanilla sitting in for Lester Holt this morning. Good to see you.
And good to see you, too. Did you watch that Serena Williams
I saw the highlights this morning. It's unbelievable.
We haven't had a good John McEnroe moment in a couple years until Serena went off last night.
After being called out on a foot foul, right on a second serve, she was trying to stage a comeback. And look at this language. She's talking to the lines judge there, which ended up costing her the match. This was serious stuff. She has not apologized, and she's not said exactly what she said to that judge.
And the stakes were high. That was match point.
Yeah.
So it was definitely stakes were high there. We're going to talk about that a little bit later.
Also this morning, while the president was in Minnesota to get his supporters all fired up over health care reform, his opponents were making their voices heard in Washington in a big way. What does this war of words mean for the president's agenda? We will find out.
Also ahead, Jay Leno is getting ready for a big debut, and primetime TV may never be the same. Coming up, we're going to hear from the former Tonight Show host about his next big adventure, which starts tomorrow. And interestingly enough, he's been off TV for 3 months now. I feel like he's got so many jokes all built up inside that he just can't wait to find TV again.
He says with all the pressure, still easier than replacing Carson all those years ago when you had to replace a living legend, obviously.
I can imagine, yep. But first, we're going to get right to what authorities are calling new potential evidence in the case of a Yale graduate student gone missing. NBC's Mike Taibbi is on Yale's campus in New Haven, Connecticut with all the latest. Mike, good morning to you.
Good morning, Jenna. Last night, Yale VP Linda Lorimer sent an email out to the university community, basically calling it the most perplexing mystery and adding that we still don't know where Annie Lee is. We don't know what happened to her. But while there has been hope all week that she might just be another nervous runaway bride, a police source in New Haven confirmed to NBC News yesterday that bloody clothes and other evidence have been found in this building behind me, evidence that suggests a strong possibility of foul play. The search for evidence and witnesses has been intense. The FBI working with dozens of city, state, and Yale University police to determine what kind of missing persons case they'd been probing, foul play, or just cold feet. There is now a missing persons billboard visible to drivers on the highways approaching New Haven. Investigators, by the way, have pointed out they have not identified any persons of interest, let alone suspects, because it's not yet been determined that a crime has been committed. Jenna?
All right, Mike Taibbi, thank you. Joining us now on the phone is one of Annie Lee's mentors, Professor Rocky Tuan from the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. Professor, thanks for taking the time to talk to us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Now, for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you very much.
And now here's Carl.
Jenna, thanks. Now to the ongoing battle over health care reform that was waged on two fronts on Saturday. The president rallying his forces at a campaign-style stop in Minnesota, while opponents marched on the nation's capital in big numbers. NBC's Mike Vaquera is at the White House this morning with more. Mike, good morning to you.
Good morning, Carl. You're right. It was a tale of two rallies yesterday, one here in Washington on the west front of the Capitol, where tens of thousands gathered to protest President Obama's policies, and the other in Minnesota, where an arena full of supporters cheered on the president.
It was a coalition of the concerned and the angry.
We're not right-wing radicals. We are American people.
Tens of thousands of protesters carrying signs and claiming to represent every state in the union.
Do you have any idea what it takes to get someone from Montana to come to D.C.?
Gathering
and it needs to be fixed. Fix it. Don't screw it up any more than it is.
And Carl, more fallout from that outburst by Representative Joe Wilson at the president's speech to Congress. Now both Wilson and his challenger, an Iraq War veteran, have raised more than $1 million in campaign cash since last Wednesday night, an unprecedented amount of money for such an obscure House race. Carl?
Mike Vaquera in Washington. Mike, thanks for that. David Gregory's moderator of Meet the Press. He joins us this morning from Washington. David, good morning to you.
Good morning, Carl.
We saw the tape of those protesters in Washington protesting big government. Can that kind of grassroots effort from the conservative base put a dent in the president's agenda beyond health care?
Well, it certainly can, because I think that the protest and the message goes beyond health care, too. It is really an indictment against the president, against the administration for excessive government. For the expansion of big government. And that's really the argument that's being made and that's galvanizing a lot of people on the right throughout the country. And it has been a huge distraction over the course of August, over the course of summer, and will be carried into other aspects of his agenda.
At the same time, he clearly had the crowd in Minnesota fired up at the Target Center, who are people behind him on the health care front. At this stage, David, of the health care debate, how important is public support, or is this now about legislative arm twisting?
No, but public support is huge right now because it allows the arm twisting to happen. The White House knows they have got to get a bump in public support for the president's plan if they're going to be able to use some leverage against those moderate Democrats, for instance, or even some Republicans, just a handful that might come over and vote for this thing. That's why the speech was made on Wednesday, and they're still waiting for the results.
Speaking of the handful of Republican support, we're going to hear from the Gang of Six potentially as early as this week, that bipartisan group in the Senate. Any chance you're seeing that Republican support will, in fact, come to that proposal?
Talking to people inside and outside the White House is clear. This is a 60-vote strategy in the Senate to get health care reform, and all eyes are on Senator Olympia Snowe of Maine. She is thought to be the 60th vote for reform, bearing in mind that they've lost Senator Kennedy. They've got 58 votes. Senator Byrd has been held, but they think that he can make the vote. So all eyes on Senator Snowe right now. Maybe there's a couple of others that they bring on board, but that's really where the action is. If they cannot get that, then they are prepared to move to what's called budget reconciliation and try to get it through with just 51 votes.
The president's going to speak in New York tomorrow, marking the one-year anniversary of Lehman Brothers' collapse. What do we expect to hear from him?
Well, as you know very well, covering these issues day in and day out, I think he's going to talk about what's happened in a year and how this administration, working really with the end of the Bush administration, were able to prevent a complete financial collapse. And that's part of what he'll talk about, talking about the stimulus plan. But he's going to talk about new rules for the road, which are controversial on Wall Street, what they do next to try to avoid this kind of leverage from getting out of control, from risk getting out of control, also dealing with executive compensation, all of these issues that are really going to get sort of in the weeds of regulation, but are going to be a key part of his message that this can't happen again.
A lot to watch in the days to come. David Gregory, thanks.
Thanks.
It's now 13 minutes past the hour. Time for more of this morning's headlines. And for that, we head over to Peter Alexander at the news desk. Hey, Peter.
Jenna, good morning. Carl, good morning. Nice to see you as well. Good morning to you at home. We begin with dramatic pictures from a rescue at sea. It happened in Corpus Christi Bay off the Texas coast. Look at this. A Coast Guard rescue crew spotted flames shooting out of this fishing boat. They found two men floating nearby in a life raft. Both of them were hoisted out, choppered to a local hospital. One of those men was in shock with burns. No word on his condition. The second man, we have learned, is recovering. Torrential rains in western Florida caused severe flooding on Saturday. Some areas saw up to 6 inches of rain in less than 24 hours. The National Weather Service says flooding along the Manatee River could reach its highest levels in 14 years. And in California, storms caused problems of a different sort as intense lightning sparked more than 20 fires in the San Francisco Bay Area. More than 400 lightning strikes were recorded on Saturday. The storm also knocked out power to about 50,000 homes. Customs agents along the California-Mexico border arrested 2 men on Saturday, found with more than $500,000 cash. The men were trying to leave the U.S. with a duffel bag stuffed with cash when they were stopped by federal officials. The men failed to declare the cash at a border crossing and now face smuggling charges. Finally, that controversial close to a tennis star Serena Williams' run at the U.S. Open last night. Now picture this, okay? It's the semifinals, 15-40 match point. The defending champ Williams argues a call made by the line judge. There she is. Some courtside fans and reporters there say they heard Williams say, quote, "You're lucky I'm not shoving this ball down your throat," as well as some other choice words. Tournament officials were called out. They penalized Williams with 1 point for unsportsmanlike conduct. That point, though, gave the match to Belgian Kim Clijsters. Clijsters moves on to play Denmark's Caroline Wozniacki in tomorrow's final. Ironically, of course, tennis, the only sport, Jen and Carl, where love is a part of the game, but there was no love on center court last night.
Did you see how Peter was getting? Peter's like, and then you couldn't see it because there was video. And then Serena was over here, and then over here was Kim, and over here. So all into it. His head was bopping back and forth. Way to get into the story, Peter.
Yeah, I was into it.
If I'd have been that judge, I would have been, okay, that's cool.
You're Serena, no problem.
Keep the point.
He's a force to be reckoned with in more ways than one.
Janice Huff is here with a check of the weather. Good to see you. It's going to be nice today.
Well, it's going to be nice here. The U.S. Open over the last couple of days has been rained out, but it will. The sun will shine here in the Northeast. However, there's more rain for Texas. Flooding rains, unfortunately, although some areas of central Texas really need the rain around the San Antonio area, south central Texas, although they're not really getting everything. It's between San Antonio, Dallas, and Oklahoma City where we're seeing the heavy rain. 2 to 4 inches locally. Some areas already have received as much as 4.
Janice, thanks. Still to come on today, we'll meet a special newborn who came into the world at just the right time. But first, these messages.
Elton John says he wants to become a dad for the first time at age 62. The British singer visited an orphanage in the Ukraine and says his heart was stolen by a 14-month-old little boy named Lev.
Elton John says his longtime partner David Furnish has often talked about adopting a child, but he's always said no. It appears now he's changed his mind. He says he has no idea how to go about adopting little Lev, so this one is definitely to be continued. I love Elton John. That little boy is adorable.
Absolutely adorable. This is the popular thing now of stars going out and adopting children around the world.
Yes, but this is a great cause, doing work in the Ukraine for HIV kids.
Absolutely. And we'll be right back. But first, these messages. And still to come on today, Jay Leno opening up about his new primetime show. The details have been kept under wraps for 3 months. Until now, we're going to bring you a preview.
Plus, a lot more on the search for missing Yale student Annie Lee. What are investigators not telling us? But first, these messages.